What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 18 Saturday games.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for the Saturday slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, NFL Week 18. Let's take a look at this 2-game Saturday slate. So at the quarterback position, of course I like Patrick Mahomes. He's the most expensive quarterback on the slate. But if you want to save some salary with this pick, I got a guy who had a pretty good week last week. He's got a fantastic matchup and an excellent game script. Take a look at Jarrett Stidham from the Las Vegas Raiders playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have the 9th worst defense overall. They give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Jarrett Stidham came in last week, scored 28 fantasy points. He had 7 rush attempts in those games. He's going to be about 27% owned. He's projected at 15.1 fantasy points here on Saturday. But I think he can score close to 20 fantasy points or more in this one. He's $7,000 FanDuel salary. Let's see what his DraftKings salary is. He is, let's go to the Saturday game slate. He is $5,400 DraftKings salary, $1,600 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 52.5 points scored in this game, and they have the Raiders trailing by 9.5. So Jarrett Stidham actually scored 31 DraftKings points last week. He got 7 rush attempts. Now he's got a fantastic matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's a good game script here, as Vegas thinks that the Raiders are going to be behind by about 10 points in this game. So putting pressure on Jarrett Stidham to score the ball. He's going to want to show what he's got, try to earn that quarterback position. Vegas thinks there's going to be 52.5 points scored in this game, so a high-scoring game. I think this is a good game to stack, especially on the Raiders side. So I like Jarrett Stidham here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Oh, and he's going to be about 20% owned on DraftKings. Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. So the stud on the slate, although he was out last week, he'll be good to go this week. I like Derrick Henry from the Tennessee Titans playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have the 12th worst defense overall. They're middle of the pack defending opposing running backs. Derrick Henry has averaged 21.1 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 21.3 rush attempts per game and 2.7 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 39% owned, projected at 18.6 fantasy points this Saturday. He's $8,000 DraftKings salary, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 40 points scored in this game, with the Titans trailing by 6. So Derrick Henry has scored 23 and 29 fantasy points in his last 2 games. He got 23 and 21 rush attempts in those games off of 2 and 4 pass targets. So I like Derrick Henry here versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, if you want to save some salary on this pick, take a look at Travis Etienne from the Jacksonville Jaguars playing the Tennessee Titans, who have the 6th worst defense overall. They've been good versus opposing running backs, but Travis Etienne has averaged 13.6 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 13.3 rush attempts per game, 2.7 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 52% owned. He's projected at 13.7 fantasy points here this week. He's 6,700 DraftKings salary. Vegas thinks there's going to be 40 points scored in this game, with the Jaguars favored by 6. So Travis Etienne has scored 26, 14, and 17 fantasy points in the last 3 games, off of 9, 22, and 19 rush attempts, and he had 3 pass targets in each of those games. So only 12 pass targets last week, but he did put up only 12 touches last week, but he did put up 26 fantasy points. Not the best running back matchup in the world, but the Tennessee Titans defense is vulnerable, so they could be operating in the red zone quite a bit this game. So I like Travis Etienne here versus the Tennessee Titans. Now, if you want to save some salary at running back, take a look at Isaiah Pacheco from the Kansas City Chiefs playing the Las Vegas Raiders, who have the second worst defense overall, give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Isaiah Pacheco has scored 13, 10, and 10 fantasy points in the last 3 games, off of 9, 14, and 15 rush attempts, on top of 2, 2, and 1 pass target. He's going to be about 41% owned, projected at 10.7 fantasy points here in Week 18 on Saturday. He's 5,600 DraftKings salary. Vegas thinks there's going to be 52.5 points scored in this game, with the Kansas City Chiefs favored by 9.5. So this is a great matchup, and I love this game script. High-scoring game, and a run-friendly game script here for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Isaiah Pacheco, unfortunately, is sharing his carries and pass targets with Jerick McKinnon, who is more expensive on the slate. Jerick McKinnon is 700 more DraftKings salary. And I do think that Isaiah Pacheco is going to out-touch McKinnon here this week. So I'm going to take the salary savings. So I like Isaiah Pacheco here versus the Las Vegas Raiders.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, moving on to the tight end position. Moving on to the wide receiver position. The stud on the slate is Devante Adams from the Las Vegas Raiders, playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have the 9th worst defense overall, give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Devante Adams has averaged 21.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 10.7 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 95% of the snaps, going to be about 34% owned, projected at 18.2 fantasy points here this Saturday. He's 8,800 DraftKings salary, and we know Vegas thinks there's going to be 52.5 points scored in this game, with the Raiders trailing by 9.5. So a good passing game script for the Raiders and a good matchup. Devante Adams has scored 37, 4, and 7 fantasy points in the last 3 games, off of 11, 9, and 9 pass targets. So I like Devante Adams here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. So if you want to save some salary at the wide receiver position, take a look at Robert Woods from the Tennessee Titans, playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have the 12th worst defense overall, 13th most fantasy points versus opposing wide receivers. Robert Woods scored 15 fantasy points last game off of 9 pass targets. He's going to be about 17% owned, so relatively low ownership for a 2-game slate. You could almost call this a sleeper pick, and he's projected at 8.5 fantasy points here this Saturday. I like this pick because he's only 4,100 DraftKings salary. Vegas thinks there's going to be 40 points scored in this game, with the Titans trailing by 6. So I think it's a good game script for the Titans to pass the ball. I think Robert Woods will get at least 6 pass targets in this game. His salary is low, and I like that low ownership. Now, he's only been getting about 4 to 5 pass targets per game on the season. His average is 5.4 pass targets per game on the season, and his production has been pretty low throughout the season, only averaging 6.8 fantasy points per game on the season. But I am encouraged by his last game where he scored 15 fantasy points off of 9 pass targets, and I think that volume continues into this last week. So I like Robert Woods here versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Okay, coming down in salary even more here, I like Marvin Jones Jr. from the Jacksonville Jaguars, playing the Tennessee Titans, who have the 6th worst defense overall, and they give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Marvin Jones has averaged 7.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 21% owned, projected at 7.4 fantasy points here on Saturday. He's 3,600 DraftKings salary. We know Vegas thinks there's going to be 40 points scored in this game, with the Jaguars favored by 6. Marvin Jones Jr. has scored 12, 5, and 10 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 7, 4, and 6 pass targets. So fantastic matchup. Salary is super low here. I love that he got 4 to 7 pass targets per game in the last 3 weeks. I expect him to see at least 5 pass targets here on Saturday, and at 3,600 with a fantastic matchup, I think that's going to be a pretty good play, nice value play. So I like Marvin Jones Jr. here versus the Tennessee Titans.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL. NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Now, although he didn't get a lot of pass targets last week, the other wide receiver you want to keep your eye on is Christian Kirk from the Jacksonville Jaguars, playing the Tennessee Titans, who have the 6th worst defense overall, give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Christian Kirk has averaged 14.4 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 7.8 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 88% of the snaps, going to be about 34% owned, projected at 13.2 fantasy points here on Saturday. He's 6,200 DraftKings salary, and Christian Kirk has scored 4, 6, and 15 fantasy points in the last 3 weeks off of 3, 6, and 10 pass targets. So he's been producing all year. Last 2 games, not so much, but I think he's in a good spot, good bounce back game this last week of the season. So I like Christian Kirk here versus the Tennessee Titans. Okay, moving on to the tight end position, I like Evan Ingram from the Jacksonville Jaguars playing the Tennessee Titans, who have the 6th worst defense overall. They give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Evan Ingram has averaged 11 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5.9 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 77% of the snaps, going to be about 37% owned, projected at 12.3 fantasy points here this Saturday. He's $4,500 DraftKings salary, and Evan Ingram has scored 4, 21, and 14 fantasy points in the last 3 weeks off of 2, 8, and 10 pass targets. So not a great game last week, but he's been killing it up until that last game. A great matchup. Vegas thinks there's going to be 40 points scored in this game, with the Jaguars favored by 6. So I like Evan Ingram here versus the Tennessee Titans. Now I also like Darren Waller, who's come back. He's played the last 3 games. Darren Waller from the Las Vegas Raiders playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have the 9th worst defense overall, give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Darren Waller has averaged 9.9 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 4.6 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 86% of the snaps, going to be about 21% owned, projected at 9.9 fantasy points here on Saturday. He's only $4,400 DraftKings salary. We know Vegas thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game. 52.5 points scored in this game, with the Raiders trailing by 9.5. Good passing game script. Darren Waller has scored 16, 10, and 14 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 5, 5, and 3 pass targets. So I like Darren Waller here versus the Kansas City Chiefs.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video, or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.